Hi, everyone. Welcome to the quarterly environmental flows work group meeting. This is a work group through the Water Quality Monitoring Council through California. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm Chris Taniguchi-Kwan. I'm the chair of this work group. I'm also here with Brianna Dresser, who's the co-chair. Brianna, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Brianna Drescher. I'm a senior environmental scientist supervisor with the In-Stream Flow program at CDFW. And I work with Chris very frequently on all things California environmental flows. So I'm excited to be here and get to co-chair with her.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. I also forgot to say that I lead the ecohydrology research program at SCORP. And then we also have Lori Weber here. Lori, do you want to introduce yourself to the work group?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Weber. I'm the new director of the Water Quality Monitoring Council, filling in after Nick Martirano. And just wanted to say hi. I'll be attending as many of these work group meetings as I can. Happy to help where needed, and just I'm here to support the work groups and the work of the council. So feel free to reach out to me. And may have worked with some of you in the past. I used to work in the integrated report 303D list. And then before that, I was the coordinator for the surface water ambient monitoring program at the State Water Board. So I've done some monitoring in my career. So just happy to be here, and thanks, Chris, for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Lori, and congratulations on your new role. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, so I'm really excited. We have a pretty full agenda today. We're gonna start out with new member introductions in just a little bit and some housekeeping. And then we'll jump into our first presentation, which is all about the California Water Plan update from 2028. We have Paul Shipman here from DWR. Bronwyn Stanford's going to be giving a quick update on a new functional flows calculator and a little tour of the flow calculator. And then I'm really excited to have Lisa Haney here from Orange County Water District. She's going to be presenting on some of the work they're doing on FURO and digital twins for a thriving riparian ecosystem. And then we'll end with roundtable updates from anyone and wrap up items and potential future agenda topics. So with that, I just wanted to note that the meeting is being recorded. If you aren't speaking, if you can please mute yourself, that would be great. And we'll have our presentations, and there'll be plenty of time for questions and discussion following each of the presentations, but feel free to use the chat function. We'll be monitoring that if you have any questions that pop up, and then we can answer those at the end. And with that, I guess we can start out with if there's any new members, if you want to unmute yourself and share your video if you'd like, and just say your name, where you're from, and we can go around.
Hey, I'll jump in. I'm not sure if simply attending this meeting makes me a member, but it's my first meeting with this group. My name's Matthew Heberger. I'm a hydrologist at the San Francisco Estuary Institute, and environmental flows are just a matter of personal and professional interest to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ray Heimstra. I'm the Associate Director at Orange County Coastkeeper and Inland Empire Waterkeeper. Same thing. This is my first meeting. I'm also the public representative on the Monitoring Council.
Great. Thanks, Raymond. Welcome.
Betsy Stapleston, and I'm with the Scott River Watershed Council.
Good morning. My name is Angelina Cook, and I am with the California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance, working on in-stream flow requirements in Northern California.
I'm Ken Limke. I see that my signature there says Nick Van Vliet, who's a colleague of mine that forwarded me this meeting invite. I'm just listening in, but I work on environmental flows in the Trinity River. Um, so I'm just curious about what you guys are up to and tuning in. Thanks for having me.
I'm Shay Richardson. I have attended these meetings in the past, but not recently. But I'm a senior environmental scientist with the State Water Board's Division of Water Rights, and I'm focused on in-stream flow efforts in the Scott and Shasta watersheds.
Hi, I'm Paul Shipman. I'm a senior water resource engineer for the Department of Water Resources, the Division of Planning, specifically. I'll be presenting in a few, but excited to be here to share kind of what we're doing and learn also from you. I'm hoping to be able to attend these more in the future. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name's Kyle Lenneberg. I'm a nature-based solution scientist working with the California Air Resources Board. I model greenhouse gas fluxes and carbon stocks in wetlands in California, looking just to learn about the group and what y'all are working on.
Hello.
Well, I guess I'll jump in. Hi, I'm Lena Cox. I'm with Goleta Sanitary District, and this is the first meeting I've attended.
Hello, and this is Fabian Song with the Santa Ana Water Board, and I work with TMDLs.
Hello, Will Anderson, Office of the Delta Water Masters, State Water Board. I've been involved with functional flows, environmental flows for about 10 years, formerly with the Division of Water Rights. Here to catch an update because it's been a few years now. Looking forward to Bronwyn's presentation, DWR as well. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenlin Zhang. I'm a senior engineer with Department of Water Resources. I have a long history of doing numerical modeling and working with different kinds of data. And recently, I have switched more to a project management role. So I'm interested to learn more about the data, both for the technical aspect and for more for the project management aspect. Thank you.
Oh, I don't think we can hear you, Alex. Okay, well, welcome to all the new members and thanks for everyone for attending. This is a really good turnout. I guess as we're waiting for Alex, Alex, maybe you can introduce yourself after the first presentation. We can get started. Is there anyone else that wants to introduce themselves? Okay. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll hand the presentation over to Paul Shipman from DWR.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. And we'll don't use Zoom super often, so we'll hopefully get this working. Let's do present. Okay, hopefully you guys are seeing PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, we are.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'm here talking about the California Water Plan Update 2028, in particular the part of it known as the future scenarios. This presentation is going to be focused on the changes from 2023 to 2028, but I realize that not everybody is familiar with the process up through 2023, so I will try to add to it where relevant, kind of some more background. For those who don't know, the California Water Plan is a strategic plan for California water management. It was started in the mid 1900s with the original plan that involved the State Water Project, and it's been gotten updates every so often, with more recently having updates every 5 years. It's produced by DWR with participation from a lot of different state agencies. And one element of it is this requirement to assess future scenarios and gaps between supply and demand. To that end, in the most recent water plan 2023, which you can see kind of an image of results of on the screen, we assessed kind of these 6 metrics. And those were kind of a surface water metric with reduced KR over storage, a groundwater metric with groundwater dependency, an urban metric around the amount of unmet urban demand, an agricultural metric around unmet agricultural demand. And what we kind of considered our weakest metric was this environmental metric, which for the last update, we used in-stream flow violations because that's what we kind of had the ability to do at the time. It's something that we're going to be improving in this next update for 2028, and we're going to kind of go over some of those details. And then finally, an increase in high flow flood control points can represent some flooding potential concerns. I do want to say that the model is primarily, the model behind this is a WEAP model. It's primarily a flow-based model, which then it's been a struggle for us to find a good environmental metrics to kind of try to track impacts to that portion of the water system. It is a high-level model. Typically, this updated one will be running it at the HUC 8 level. So generally relatively high level, and it's also a comparative model. So we run it in the future and we run it in the current conditions, and we compare the two to see vulnerabilities. In-stream flow violations, while obviously significant when they happen, are relatively rare in the model because the model prioritizes it very highly, and we didn't feel like that adequately represented the actual health of the environmental system. And so we're really excited, as you can see in this, we're gonna be trying to apply the environmental flows framework as a way to get a better assessment of health of the environmental systems. So let's walk through kind of this update. Just wanted to highlight the team. There's a large group of people that work on this. I'm just the one here talking to you today. We have support from also a few consultants, particularly SEI, Stockholm Environment Institute, who are experts in the WEAP modeling platform and software, as well as Wooden and Curran that are supporting us on this project, and a bunch of people from DWR. Why do we do this? We're hoping to improve understanding of future vulnerability in California to meet California Water Code 10,004.6, which states the department shall conduct a study to determine the amount of water needed to meet the state's future needs and to recommend programs, policies, and facilities to meet those needs. We're going to do this through leveraging an interdisciplinary team to analyze California water system based on representative metrics. And we're going to use the future scenarios model to expand geographic coverage, refine model interpretation, and incorporate adaptation strategies using best available data and methods. This is going to be a little more background about the model itself, and I apologize it's not directly connected to the environmental flow framework, but I thought it might be helpful for you all to have this kind of information. And again, this is also about the changes from 2023 to 2028. This model has been built kind of incrementally over the last 20 years, and this is just the most recent refinement to it. The last update, for example, focused on updates to the Delta operations to make them reflect kind of current operations, as well as incorporation of sea level rise. So this model, this update, we're going to focus on, we had kind of some older areas in the model, and we've migrated all of those to use USGS HUC 8s to represent watersheds. We are refining the model processes to improve water accounting. Groundwater previously was a very coarse representation, and we've improved that to actually represent actual basins. Theoretically basins. They still conceptual points, but they're tied to actual basin locations now. We're going to improve representation of agricultural through detailed irrigation modeling, And then we're incorporating the weather generator to assess kind of the future possible climates. We're slowly expanding to create a statewide model. You saw before was just Sacramento results. We had the whole Central Valley in the last update. This update, we're going to expand a few different areas. We'll go over that in a second. And then we're going to update vulnerability metrics and adaptation strategies. And that's where environmental flows framework comes in, which I'm excited about. So as mentioned, model expansion. We're adding the San Francisco Bay Area and the South Coast area to the model in 2028. And then, pending funding, we're hoping to keep building the rest of the regions until we have full coverage of California. I will say this is a high-level model. You can kind of see the areas as shown in the left in the model itself. That's an actual picture of the model from the last update with the kind of previous zones. Those aren't Huck 8s, but the new model will work off of Huck 8s as shown here. And I sort of mentioned Trinity, so it's kind of funny, but Trinity is also included as it has flows that flow into the Sacramento River HR. Eventually, once we have kind of a North Coast area model, that'll be more directly integrated. Just highlighting some of the refinements and operations that have happened over time to the model, going from a very, very high level model to trying to get a little more detailed in the operations and the way water flows through the system. In particular, it's the Delta kind of area. The groundwater refinement I mentioned. Previously, we just had a single overlying node for groundwater that was just representing theoretical groundwater use. We're going to be using some integration with polling results with CTVSIM to represent, to better job representing actual groundwater basins. For those who don't know, CTVSIM is the Central Valley, California Central Valley simulation model that's used in a lot of times in Sigma implementation and provided by DWR's Sigma program. I mentioned agricultural water use. We're improving the estimation previously used using a simplified soil moisture method, and we're moving to a full crop growth method that we hope will better represent future vulnerability due to increased evapotranspiration from temperature changes. And then one thing we're really excited about is the incorporation of the weather generator. Obviously, the future is uncertain in terms of what kind of weather patterns we'll have. Weather generator is a project that DBR worked on in partnership with Cornell and a bunch of other people. There's a link to the report in the bottom. I'm not going to do it justice here, but just at a high level, how the weather generator works, it provides novel weather sequences that were possible but not represented in historical sequences. They're influenced by weather sequences that were seen in historical, but it does allow combinations that maybe didn't happen in historical. They have a 1,000-year series that we're going to be using in this model that's going to represent a lot more statistical variability than we have from just purely the historical sequences. And this replaces the paleo data that was used in 2023. We're also updated a bunch of the data sets with just more updated information, including that climate data, urban land use, ag land use changes every so often, updated recycled water information, desalination, updated obviously Colorado River imports as those are going through significant changes at this time, and then updated model calibration to reflect all those changes. And finally, the vulnerability metrics, which is kind of the reason we're here today. Really excited to talk about to get to a refined ecosystem metric. We saw a lot of application of the environmental flows framework at CREMP. We saw a lot of different groups applying it, and it seemed like a really good fit for the type of information we're looking to be able to assess. We're hoping to get some assessment in these areas of the amount of environmental flows that aren't being met. Currently, we're proposing to consider a deficit between a modeled flow and a functional flow for each season type, so it'd be by season. And then we wouldn't count flows above functional flows. That was important for like the dry period flows, or sometimes the flow is above the functional flow, that wouldn't count as extra flow. We would only count it by season. But just for reference, the other flows, the other metrics we're going to use surface water, again, the end of year surface water storage. Groundwater, we're excited to be able to directly kind of report this time change in groundwater storage or levels, because we'll have a more accurate representation of the groundwater. Urban and ag are unchanged from earlier. They just present unmet water demand. Flooding potential is unchanged. And then we're adding a new metric on drought around the cumulative departure from mean runoff by Huck. And then the other part where environmental flows would come in is this, adaptation strategies. Adaptation strategies are opportunities that we have to test portfolios of actions under the future scenarios to see how they are responsive to, so how those adaptation strategies are responsive to reducing the vulnerabilities that we're identifying. Right now, we only have limited funding, so we're going to do some tests in the Central Valley for these. The San Francisco and South Coast, we're going to do focusing primarily on the vulnerability analysis. But I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we're considering doing for adaptation strategies. These aren't locked in yet or anything, but would be implementation of FUROMAR to see how that kind of might improve the demand, the gaps between supply and demand we're seeing, implementation of actions from the GSP plans, implementation of targets from the water supply strategy, and then relevant to this group, implementation of demands solely for the purpose of meeting environmental flows. Right now, the vulnerability metric that we'd have would be based around just under current operations, how close are we to meeting the environmental flows that would be asked for in the environmental flows framework. And this would be this adaptation strategy would include, okay, what if we put a priority towards meeting those flows? How much of we then meet when we put, intentionally put water supplies to it, and how does that affect the ag and urban demands and other demands in the system? I think that's the bulk of my content. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm guessing there'll be a lot of questions about context because there's a lot of different elements to this thing.
Great, thanks, Paul. Are there any questions for Paul?
I can also go over some of the 2023 results if people want to see kind of the type of results we're able to generate out of the model. I can share some response services. And I'll provide a link to that actually too.
Yeah, that would be great. Paul, I was curious what the timing of this work is. It's for the water in 2028. Yeah.
That's a great question. Thank you. I should have spoke to that. Yeah, we begin this process as soon as the last plan kind of is complete. So we started kind of in 2023. We've been redoing the model, as you kind of saw in those updates, to change the basic structure of the model, make it updated. We are currently calibrating the model for historic operations to make sure we're representing flows properly. And then so in the next year, we hope to have our first set of vulnerability metrics for the baseline vulnerability. At that point, we will be implementing the adaptation strategies, and then by June 2027, we hope to have runs where we've implemented adaptation strategies and now can create those comparative analysis to say, okay, now with these adaptation strategies implemented, what changes do we see in vulnerabilities? How close does this bring us to meeting the gaps we see in water supply and demand? And let me share that those kind of results from 2023 so you get a better feel for what we're talking about. This is the same link that I put into chat. This is the Water Plan Future Scenarios Interactive Data Explorer. So as you can see, we have kind of like high level results that are by hydrologic region. Might have to refresh because, okay, no, it did. We have kind of a probability of worst conditions, and those probabilities are informed by the suite of global climate models that are, in this case, we're part of CMIP 5. In 2028, they'll be informed by CMIP 6. That's the intercomparison study that's done every so often. So there's a kind of a probability of worst conditions and then an expected value, and then an extreme possible extreme value that represents kind of the 95th percentile of how bad things could possibly get underneath the probability windows that we're seeing. These are kind of the high level summary results. We also have results in this case in 2023 we used planning areas. In 2028 again these will be replaced with HUCs, but you could drill down to see individual areas. So here's an area that's more vulnerable. Where we have kind of worse conditions expected. We have these for each area, and then kind of the more exciting results for me as a technical person is the system responses. We're kind of for that same area. You can see a system response to the whole area. So you can see in this case, this particular part of Samaki River, that's for groundwater. This area is projected to become more dependent on groundwater under any of the agricultural conditions, or under any of the future climate conditions, because apparently it's a very stressed area.
Chris Milan has her hand raised. I think she might have a question.
Sure.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through your baseline data for the modeling? Where'd you begin with your data?
Baseline data for the modeling. So the California Water Plan, every so often, let me stop sharing this and I will switch over to the water plan itself and I'll share. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the water supply imbalances that are completed by the California Water Plan. I will share my screen a second with those. Sorry, 1 second. These are completed by our water supply and balance program. They develop annual water balances based off of data that's reported from local agencies to the State Water Board, data from the federal government on operations, data from obviously DVR itself on operations, and then any other locally reported data that we have access to is compiled every year into the water supply imbalances. And these provide kind of the baseline demands that are then implemented in the model. Beyond that, we also use stream gauges throughout Central Valley and South Coast and San Francisco to calibrate the rivers. The operations data typically comes, we try to match operations data out of CalSim. I'm sure there's other data sets that you're thinking about that I haven't answered. So if you want to ask about a specific data set, I'm happy to answer that particularly. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Did you go back? How far back historically did you go? Like USGS stream gauges, how far back?
Yeah, for the stream gauges, the surface water, the stream calibration starts in the 1970s and kind of runs through to 2020. And then our operations calibrations, that is only from 2000 to 2020. So that's where we, so the stream gauge calibration is kind of more on the upper watersheds before operations come in. And then the operations calibration is from 2020 to, from 2000 to 2020.
So Is there a reason why you didn't go back further? Because I know USGS goes all the way back to the 1948, I think.
Yeah, it's just mostly limitations from data for the various areas. We only have data consistently at all the places we wanted it, starting for the hydraulic calibration in the 70s, and then for the operations data we only have kind of complete data starting in the 2000s.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Paul. I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to share with the group.
Yeah, I have some questions I could ask to the group. I guess I'd be curious, how interesting to you is this idea of us assessing kind of these environmental flow framework in this model to be able to come up with results around, to come up with results around that vulnerability. Does that something that would be of interest to you? What kind of results would you be interested in seeing? And again, on an adaptation strategy related to environmental flows framework, does that seem like something you'd be interested in, or is there um, something else I guess, is there other ideas that we're missing that you might be interested in, or any thoughts you might be able to share with us of concerns you might have related to the implementation of environmental flows?
Chris, Juan?
Yeah, so for me and the work that I do in the Napa River watershed, state water resources just finished a supply and demand on the Napa River. And I know that your department is rolling that out throughout the state. For us here, we have a very dire situation in the Napa River because it's going dry every year for the last 10 years or more. We have huge dry stretches, so we have a massive loss of ecosystem resources. And how will this help us from preventing dewatering of the river and killing of, public trust resources? We're looking for answers here. And this model is starting in Delta, and I guess it'll roll out throughout the rest of the state. But environmental flows is a good functional flows that we're hoping entities will use to improve conditions in streams for everyone.
That's a great question. So
So
what this would, sorry,
go ahead. Yes, thank you.
what this model would provide, and what would then be documented in the water plan accordingly, would be how much worse things are expected to get. Kind of in the regional reports where we would document kind of existing problems, but then this model would say, okay, based off what we're seeing in the likely climatic futures, we anticipate the amount of flows are going to get this much worse. And then through the adaptation strategies, we would then explore, okay, if demands to meet environmental flows are implemented, how much better do we see things becoming? Although additionally, there'll be other adaptation strategies too that could be looked at, including we're always encouraged looking at recycling, additional water recycling, how that helps relieve stress on other flows, as well as like looking at, say, some of the GSP projects, if they're implemented, How will that improve kind of future resilience into the future? Does that help understand what would come out of this model? It's
Yes.
primarily
Yes, okay, I understand that. Now, let me have if you will, a follow-up question. Once the model produces, say, environmental flows for the Napa River, is there coordination with other state departments like the Division of Water Rights? I mean, how does the model then work on the ground?
It's a great question. Sorry, let's keep going on. Historically, we've shared our results through the California Water Environmental Modeling Forum, QEMF. Previous to that, there used to be what was called the SWAN network, where people would be able to get feedback directly on the model. We're hoping to implement more of that, where we're able to share the model with groups and get their direct feedback on it. We've been somewhat limited in ability to do that. In 2023, obviously, we had COVID, where there was a massive breakdown in public engagement as a result of inability to do public meetings and such. But we're hoping to come back to be able to do more of those public meetings, and we're hoping to be able to pull in a technical advisory committee, to comment on the model and the results to get some of that integration back. Right now, we don't have it yet. We're not currently coordinating with Division of Water Rights, for example. But we hope to be able to do more of that in the future. Thank you for the suggestion.
Can I just weigh in really quick on the coordination aspect of things? This is Lori Weber. I'm the new director of the Monitoring Council. I just wanted to weigh in and say that one of the purposes of this work group is to coordinate between agencies and the regulated community and other interested parties. So this is a great forum, and I really thank Paul for coming to this meeting and giving us an overview. It's pretty early in the process for the model, but I would encourage you to continue to come back to these meetings and share with the group, because we have a pretty good representation here of interested parties. So thank you. Just wanted to weigh in and say that.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Lori. That's a really good point, and hopefully, I'm sure there'll be opportunities for continued interaction with Paul, right? And maybe potential presentations and updates to the group for feedback. I see Zenlin has their hand up.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for the presentation. I hope that you don't mind me asking an interesting question about the context of this modeling. I was just wondering, like, how is this model like different or similar compared to other models like calcium and SAC-1 in terms of model structure, constraints, and purpose?
Yeah. So the model is built in WEEP, similar to SAC-RAM. It is a node-based model, again, which is similar to calcium. It's highly simplified by comparison to calcium. So calcium, as you know, takes quite a bit of processing power to run, and the runs take a while to finish. Versus this model is meant to be much more highly simplified, so we can run a bunch of different climate futures. It's also meant to be at a planning level. I mean, obviously, it's got one node for everything that happens within a HUC. Okay, sorry. So that's obviously like a very high level. So we're not modeling specific cities. We're modeling kind of groups of cities and their impacts kind of representationally, and that's to keep run times very short, so that we can run thousands of runs with for example, for our climate series, we run 1,000 years of data, and we run that in this case we run it 25 times for these model areas in order to represent a statistically significant sampling of what possible future climates are. And then for each adaptation strategies, that adds another 1,000 years of data run 25 times. So I'll say the major difference between calcium in that way is that it's meant to be much faster and simplified, yet hopefully developing similar results. We do compare results against calcium to ensure we're kind of predicting the correct directions and the correct direction of flows during different dry conditions and so on, and make sure deliveries reflect similarly to what we see in calcium. All the operations are compared against calcium. And then on SACRAM, SACRAM was also developed by SEI, as you know, and so we've benefited greatly from the work that's been done on SACRAM. A lot of the improvements that went into developing SACRAM, we've been able to kind of incorporate into the model directly. So improvements in like the water prioritization, for example, that came out of SACRAM, we can directly implement that in the WAVE model. So I would say we are trying to make sure it's aligned with state models, but the focus is a little different. The focus is on being a relatively agile model meant to assess these water supply vulnerabilities specifically and assess them very quickly so we can run a bunch of statistical results, and we're not being constrained by a single sequence of, say, a 10-year hydrology that's dry. We're looking at a bunch of different hydrologies, including some that are very dry and some that are very wet.
Yeah, that's really cool. I also like that it's aligned with the C2VSIM. I think that's a great inclusion addition to the modeling framework. Thank you.
Thanks.
Angelina Cook has her hand raised.
Hi, thank you. Following up on Chris Malon's question, I feel like we're already very vulnerable. I feel like modeling future vulnerability it's like we're trying to minimize our current vulnerability. And so I'm just looking for ways that this model could help communities achieve that. And you mentioned earlier data set of stream gauges, and then a more recent data set of operational aspects. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm wondering, can you can the operational aspect of the model illustrate what would be needed to achieve varying levels of in-stream flow dedications?
Yeah, that would be what we would do through the adaptation strategies. Where we explore, okay, now if we change operations to prioritize meeting these environmental flows, we would be able to see improvements in the environmental situation. And then corresponding to that, we would assess it for all the metrics. So then we would see, with those improvements to environmental flows, do we see any increases in flood risk? Do we see any reductions in deliveries to other groups? And what's the magnitude of those? So it's meant to just provide kind of some helpful trade-off information. And one of the things we're hoping to get out of this analysis is that through targeting some of these environmental flows, showing significant improvements in environmental ability to meet environmental demands, that maybe doesn't significantly affect the other groups. And so we're hoping to do some model runs around exploring that area.
So when you talk about adaptation strategies, are you referring to ongoing regional collaborative efforts? Or are you talking about just more kind of state agency scenarios?
So yeah, we haven't locked in on what we're doing for this update. We're very early in the process in that aspect. We've been focusing so far just on the vulnerability part. We have not decided on final adaptation strategies. We're hoping to do an open public process later on this year, towards the end of this year and beginning of next year, where we would kind of pull together an open group to recommend final adaptation strategies. But yeah, those ones I shared were ones that we were hoping to look at, kind of the supply targets. So it's a little bit of both. So on the state side, supply targets that are proposed in the water supply strategy is one adaptation we're hoping to look at. We've also been asked a bunch of times, well, does implementation of GSP projects, do those bring, a lot of these problems? Do they solve a lot of these problems? And when I already shared with the environmental flows, if we put demands towards it, does that help to solve some of these problems? They're meant to be what if scenarios. They're meant to be, again, things that we can look at quickly at a high level. They're not project level actions, but what they would indicate is they would effectively indicate that a particular strategy looks like it's showing a lot of success in the region and it would be worth further investigation. It's meant to be like a high level kind of assessment of, do we see a lot of promise from these strategies in the area with the analysis we're doing.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that there is an intention to engage public review and feedback of the adaptation process, because and I highly encourage you to work with local groups that are working on Sigma implementation, TMDL implementation, in-stream flow requirements. Like, the local groups really have a gathered, I feel like, really good insight on kind of what the environmental flows framework can actually do at the local level. So, and then my last question is, if you can explain, because I know like up in the Shasta and Scott, there's multiple modeling processes underway. And so can you explain how this statewide modeling effort interacts with the regional modeling efforts, and if the modeling is just going to be ongoing, or if there is a point at which we shift into implementation and practical actions at the local level?
Thanks. To answer that question, the water plan model, the future scenarios model, is meant to be at a high level. It's not meant to be an implementation model. Again, it's meant to test out ideas that then, when they show promise, could be then further examined in a detailed model. For example, the integrated watershed studies that the water plan that the DWR did, not water plan, but the DWR did in coordination with locals in the San Joaquin area, is an example of one of those more detailed studies where they're able to look at a lot more specific metrics to the region. We're looking at a high level, kind of more statewide. How do we see these high level actions affecting past ones? Past adaptation strategy done, for example, included effects of increased water recycling. If every area, for example, recycled X amount of water, how did that affect the supply gap? Another one that adaptation strategy that was done in the past was around conjunctive management. If every group were to implement, say, if every region of California were to implement, say, a water bank and do more conjunctive management, how would that close the gap between supply and demand? So again, they're more what-if questions meant to provide high-level assessments. I will say that the future scenarios is not the only way to answer questions. There's a bunch of other ways to answer questions. It's not meant to be exclusive or to argue with other results. It's just meant to be a place to explore these things that can be done at a high level, and really provide insights for the state. And it's on the current conditions, like you and the other person have also mentioned, that currently there's very significant environmental concerns. Those should be documented. Those should make it up to the water plan through the regional reports. So hopefully that's something that's also happening. This isn't the only way the water plan is reporting on vulnerabilities. We also have regional reports and the supply imbalances that track kind of current conditions and those current vulnerabilities that exist in the areas.
Okay, thanks for that explanation.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Raymond?
Yeah, mine will be quick. I'm just curious if the South Coast expansion will include the Santa Ana River watershed.
I don't know off the top of my head, sorry, but it's. Do you know what DWR defines as the South Coast hydrologic region? It's everything that is included in that. I think for example, for regional water quality boards, there's 3 regional quality boards that make up that same region.
Okay,
I can get back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, that should
okay.
be. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Paul, for presenting, and thanks to everyone for really good questions and discussion. Um, and Paul, you can maybe put your email in the chat if you want, if anyone else has additional questions. Thanks, Paul. So the next item we're going to be, we'll have a update on the new functional flows calculator by Bronwyn Stanford from TNC.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris, and thanks for that great presentation, Paul. And yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I feel like we have a good crew today. Wait, no, that is right. Nope, sorry. I did not share what I was trying to share. One more moment. Okay. So I'm Bronwyn Stanford. I'm a scientist at the Nature Conservancy here in California, and I'm here to give an update on the sort of the revised, new redesigned functional flows calculator that we are just releasing now. This is a project that was funded by the Wildlife Conservation Board, and we've been leading it at the Nature Conservancy together with Foundry Spatial, who's been leading on sort of the web development piece of this. And I also wanted to acknowledge this is sort of like building on and incorporating the work of the SEF technical team, whose logos are in this bottom corner, and it sort of is growing out of and sort of helping continue to make that work as accessible and useful as we can. So a brief overview of the California Environmental Flows Framework for those that might be new to it. So the California Environmental Flows Framework, or CEF as we often call it, is a structured process for arriving at environmental flow recommendations for any river or stream. And we break it into three parts. There's what we're calling the Natural Flows Foundation, part Section A, where you evaluate the natural ranges of flow in your river or stream in the absence of human activity and can use that to identify potential ecological flows. There is the second section, Section B, or non-flow considerations, where we then look a little harder at our system and say, are there things that might make those flows not perform the functions that we want them to? Is there issues with water quality or physical habitat or some change in the community composition that might mean that we need to think differently about our flows and maybe collect more local information? And then we can revise the ecological flow criteria. And then there's the final section, Section C, where we consider other non-ecological goals and objectives for our watershed, for water supply or recreation or any other interest that we might have. And then we can bring all that information together in this final Section C to create balanced environmental flow recommendations. You can read a lot more information about the California Environmental Flows Framework at our website here. And a really key piece of this is that it's all built on this idea of functional flows. Functional flows are these sort of particularly important pieces of the annual hydrograph that have like an outsized influence on the condition of the streams. They perform really important functions. These are flows that support natural disturbances, promote physical dynamics that are needed in our rivers and streams, and help drive ecosystem functions. And they look a little bit different in each of our rivers, depending on hydrology and climate and the sort of like actual topography of your system, geology, soil, all of these things come together. But we can think about the patterns of the timings and magnitudes of these different types of flows that help our rivers function. And within the California Environmental Flows Framework, we've identified 5 functional flow components: the fall pulse that initiates the wet season, the elevated wet season base flow, the high flood or peak flows in the wet season, the spring recession down to the dry season, and then this lower dry season base flow. And really critical to our discussion today, we have also quantified each of these functional flow components with a series of metrics. And these are things that can be calculated that describe each of these functional flows. So these are things like magnitude, timing, duration, frequency, rate of change, sort of characteristics that can help us understand in numbers, like what each of these flows would look like in a given year for a given river. So the way that we calculate all these metrics is the functional flows calculator. This is sort of at the heart of stuff, is having this sort of standardized way of thinking about what functional flows look like and being able to quantify them so that we can be really precise about what we mean. So the functional flows calculator quantifies each of the functional flow metrics for each year for an input time series. It works on daily flows, and having this quantification of these metrics enables development of sort of a summary, an ability to see patterns in stream flow over time, an ability to compare what you're seeing in a river to historical or predicted future functional flow metrics, get an idea of how those functions might be altered over time. You can assess alteration. And if you're using an impaired data in the calculator, you can also sort of quantify a potential ecological flow regime for your system. So we've had a functional flows calculator for the past 7 years or so. The first one was developed by Noel Patterson together with the SUF technical team. And in this, we've sort of done a big upgrade because it's been 7 years. There's been a lot of new information and tools that we can incorporate. So some of the major upgrades in this calculator, and I'll walk through kind of what they look like in the next slides. We have now a searchable map with all USGS and CDEC gauges that you can select from if you want to look at what the functional flows would look like for that gauge. It includes information about each gauge, including whether it's considered a reference or sort of least impaired gauge or not for our purposes within the SUF technical team. Whether it presents the years of record for that gauge, the hydrologic stream class, again, is defined by the SUF technical team, and the associated USGS COM ID. We also have upgraded visualizations, including ability to see functional flow metrics for each year and the predicted ranges, a new tool to visualize the alteration assessment results. And then we also are incorporating some major new developments that have happened over the last 5 years or so. So we are incorporating additional dry season metrics. There's an alternate calculation method for flashy or highly altered rivers that gives results in more years more consistently. We have an alteration assessment that's included in the tool. And it also incorporates most functions that were in the functional flows calculator R package for those of you who had been using the tool before. If anyone's like, I have a really urgent question, please feel free. But I'm now gonna just step through some screenshots of what this tool looks like. So this is yeah, Chris.
Point of clarification on the stream classes. What you're not using Department of Fish and Wildlife's classification or USGS? Did you say you're using your own, or did I mishear that?
Yeah, so this has been part of the SUF from the beginning. We're using this so these sort of hydrologically defined stream classes. There are 9 that we've developed across the state. They're kind of shown here with abbreviations that are different. Yeah, they're different from they build on, but are different from those other classes. And there's like a papers and links on this website where you can learn more about what those classes are and why they were developed. So this is sort of the initial page you get to when you're running the calculator. There's a map which you can zoom around on, which shows stream reaches and then all of the USGS and CDEC gauges across the state. You can filter so that you're only seeing the reference gauges, and these are gauges that we use to train our model for predicting functional flows under natural conditions. It's our best sort of, again, sifting through all of the resources that are out there. It's our best list of the least impaired USGS gauges in California. These are the stream classes. So the 9 stream classes across the state, which are used to color code the stream reaches. And then if you click on a gauge, you'll see the name of the gauge ID, and the date range for which it was active. It might have been inactive for some years in the middle, but that's sort of the first and last day of data that we have for that gauge. And then you can decide what period of time you want to run the calculator for. You can use the entire date record, or you can specify a subset of years that you're more interested in. And we also have the option of being able to upload your own time series of daily flow values. You do need to have a complete water year of data for it to work because it's looking at these sort of annual patterns in the hydrograph, but you can upload your own data set as well. And then another new feature of this is you can choose calculator type. So the original functional flows calculator was all using the reference calculator. That's still here. We noticed that that calculator works well most everywhere, but in what we're calling our flashy and ephemeral stream class. So really flashy rivers or rivers that are really altered, like below a flow regulating dam, they tend to have much more jagged shapes that don't follow the sort of seasonal patterns and sort of smoother increases and decreases in flow that the calculator was expecting. So we've developed this flashy alternate. It calculates the same metrics, it uses slightly different methods, and it works better in those types of systems and is able to calculate values for more years. For almost all cases and almost all users, we suggest you choose recommended, and the tool will evaluate your data set and make a choice for you about which of those calculators would be the best suited based on the stream class and sort of the flashiness of your time series. Then when you run the calculator, you end up on this results page. It shows the flow data and the timing and magnitude of the functional flow metrics for each of the years. You can toggle on and off the timing and magnitude metrics. I'm sorry if this is a little bit small. Hopefully you'll get a chance to explore it on your own and can see it a little larger. We've also included the natural, sort of our predicted natural ranges by water year type for the functional flow metrics, which is sort of showing up in this like lighter green boxes, which is a new feature. You can use the slider bar to advance and look at any of the years that were run through the calculator. And it will show the metrics, and this is the hydrograph, and then also the metrics for each of those years. And you can also download the data in a series of CSV files that includes the flow data, the functional flow metrics, the alteration assessment, box plots of your alteration assessment if you've chosen that, percentiles that are calculated on your functional flow metrics, and then also metadata documenting sort of what was done. And then finally, we've also created this new alteration visualization where you have the we sort of summarize sort of this our sort of alteration screening for your data set, comparing it again to that predicted functional flows data set that we've produced and presented on in this group before. So it shows this summary graphic where you can see the 5 functional flow components and sort of an overview of like whether they are likely altered, likely unaltered, or indeterminate. You can click on one of these and it will show you by metric whether they're likely altered or not. And then you can also, if you click on one of these, one of the individual metrics, it will show you this chart with the dot for every year and the ranges that the model predicts. So if it's in the blue, it's like higher than 90% of years. If it's in the red, it's lower than 90% of predicted years. And you can kind of look at your distribution of data for that metric for each year. This is a lot of information. I understand that. So we also have we've spent a lot of time trying to build out the documentation. We have a science and methodology page, which provides a lot of links to other resources. It walks through the tool, the methods, those graphics I just showed you in a little bit more detail, resources. And then we also have a FAQ page, which we plan to keep building out. So if you are experimenting with this tool, we hope you do, and you have questions, please let us know and we can keep adding to the FAQ page. The final 2 things I wanted to mention, we also have an API associated with this. So you can access the data directly without having to go through the graphical user interface if you would prefer that. There are code snippets included for both R and Python that should make it really easy to run this on your machine. And then we also have the entire Python code base that powers the calculator that's available for download on GitHub. It supports batch processing. It has all the functionality of the web platform except for the visualizations. And you honestly don't need Python experience or a GitHub account to download and use this. We've provided really clear step-by-step instructions for getting this running on your machine if you have a need for that, particularly if you're running a lot of data. And that was what I had. We are in the process of, we were making some final tweaks over the next couple of weeks. But it should be ready for you to explore. And I'm looking forward to feedback and hope to hear how people are finding it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bronwyn, for that overview and update. Would you mind putting the link in the chat to? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. For an interest of time, we're a little bit over schedule right now, so maybe we can pause some of the questions about the functional flows calculator, and we'll wait until the end because we should have extra time at the end. Okay, with that, let's move on to our last presentation by Lisa Haney. She's coming from the Orange County Water District, and she'll be talking about FERO, forecast-informed reservoir operations, and digital twins for a thriving riparian ecosystem.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm gonna try to share. Can you see my slides?
Not yet.
Oh, really?
Maybe it's loading.
Let's see. Share. Let me try again.
There you go.
Not
Loading now. Okay, we see your screen, but the environmental flows meeting pop up.
It actually looks good to me. I see her slide.
Yeah, I'm seeing the.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I
Oh,
see
okay,
it.
great. So I'm like, I
Yours
don't
is
know what to
fine.
do at this
Sorry.
point. Yeah. Okay,
No, you're
great.
good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this working group. I'm brand new to this group. Hearing Paul and Bronwyn's presentations, I'm just very excited about the conversation. I think my presentation fits in beautifully with what they've just presented. And my hope is that all three of us could come together and start collaborating, because I think there's a lot of synergy here. So great conversation. I think for me, what I'm seeing is innovation for impact. Everyone is doing something innovative to make a difference. And I think OCWD is trying to do the exact same thing. So we are wanting to do water supply and also flood control and protect the environment. So it is that confluence of all three where you can operate and protect at the same time. And what I want to show you or have you notice on this slide is in this picture, this is the Prado Dam located in Corona, California, in Southern California. And this is when it's full of water. This is our operations in concert with management of the Army Corps of Prado Dam, where we're holding a storm event behind the dam. And then we're able to release that at a rate that allows us to take it downstream for infiltration into our groundwater basin. So what you'll notice, though, behind the dam is all the trees, right, that are inundated with water. And so finding that confluence of making sure that our operations are not affecting adversely this environment is really critically important to our mission, in what we do and how we operate. So that's what I'm going to talk about today and how we're trying to manage for that. Okay, just quickly, who is OCWD? My name's Lisa Haney. I'm the executive director overseeing planning and natural resources. Again, that conflux of operating and protecting. We serve 85% of the drinking water supply for Central and North Orange County. So we are a local source of wholesale water. and we service 19 cities and retail agencies. And we are very proud to have a groundwater basin in this area that can serve a reliable long-term supply of drinking water. So where are we? We're in Southern California. We are sandwiched between LA and San Diego County. Our watershed is the Santa Ana River watershed, which I believe is the longest watershed in the state of California. It's roughly 100 miles long. It starts at the headwaters in Big Bear and goes all the way to the coast here at Huntington Beach, down in Orange County. So it's a great watershed. We have a lot of partners. We're just one water utility, and we are located at the bottom of the watershed, which is important to know. As any good financial advisor will tell anyone, it is very important to have a diverse portfolio, and that's true for water supply as well. It is not good to rely only on one source of water long term. And we are also really proud of our innovation to take treated wastewater and convert that into a groundwater supply. So I'm hoping you guys have heard of the GWRS, the groundwater replenishment system. This is a partnership between Orange County Sanitation District and Orange County Water District, and it's a really great recycling effort to take, again, treated wastewater, treat it even further, and then put it into the ground as drinking water supply for later. That is roughly 35% of our portfolio. And what you'll notice is on the other side of the pie, our portfolio really is dependent on the river system, the watershed, the base flows that come down the Santa Ana River. And the base flows are just, what flows on a regular daily basis. And then the stormwater flows, which are those big storm events that occur occasionally throughout the year, and trying to maximize that opportunity for water capture. So combined, that's, roughly 40% of our water supply is the river itself. And then occasionally we use or purchase imported water. And then, of course, there's natural incidental recharge. When it rains, it percolates into the ground, and we are able to capture that as well. But the dependency on the river is really critical for this conversation today. So I mentioned Prado Dam. You got to see the picture of it, all full of water. So if you look at the upper right-hand corner, from that release of the dam downward into our Anaheim facilities, we have several recharge basins. We're able to recharge directly in the riverbed itself proper, but we also have water rights diversions where we can take them off the main channel of the river into infiltration basins. And that is how we get the water from the river into the groundwater supply. All right, here's a snapshot. Like if you were to now take a cross section of our operations, you would see we have the Prado Dam here. And then on the back side of the dam is a natural riparian forest. And this is actually the largest natural riparian forest in Southern California. So it's important. Not only is it the largest, but it's also the home of an endangered species of bird called the Leisfeld's vireo. And through our operations over time of holding water behind the dam, we've been able to grow the riparian habitat and increase the vireo population. And we now have the largest population of this endangered species within the state of California. So we're very proud of that as well. On the other side of the dam, again, is where we release at flow rates in concert with the Army Corps of Engineers to recharge into our recharge basins. And we are undergoing a study with FIRO, and FIRO is forecast informed reservoir operations. And what's exciting about this is that we're using AI technology and machine learning tools that help increase weather forecasting. And it so far has a 30% higher accuracy rate than NOAA forecasts. And all of this research is being conducted through CW3E out of Scripps Institute of Oceanography. We've been in a research mode with them for the last 6 years. This year, we've moved into formal implementation mode. We have shown that these tools do make a difference in how we can operate the dam, and we, along with Army Corps, have decided now to update the water control manual, which is the manual for which how Prado Dam will operate moving forward, to incorporate these new weather forecasting tools. Now, we're looking for increased water supply through FIRO operations. This means no construction, right? This is just optimization of how to operate the dam. It's zero cost in terms of construction. It's all optimization. So we're looking to increase water supply through optimization. We're looking to also increase flood protection and environmental protection. So as we increase our elevation behind the dam, that means we're holding more water over that sensitive species riparian habitat. And we need to make sure that as we're holding water for extended periods of time, sometimes weeks, that we're not doing any harm to that environment. And so how do we monitor that? How do we measure that? Those are the things that we're trying to figure out. We're also really interested in trying to change the operation manual and operate this dam in a more natural sequence. So as those really large storms come in, if it was a natural environment without a dam, what would happen is you'd have these really large pulse releases that would help push sediment downstream all the way to the coast. But because the dam is here, it's now a wall. And when that sediment comes rushing down with the water, it hits that dam wall and that sediment settles and then starts to fill up that conservation pool. And that hurts water supply because that sediment is now filling in the available space for which we could hold and store extra water. So as we move up in elevation, we're really just trying to keep up with sedimentation rate. Not only that, is sedimentation also affects the ability of plants to reach the groundwater supply. And if they're cut off from that, it could hurt the riparian forest as well. I think by flooding, we're able to make up for the sedimentation, but we still need to monitor both over time and look at effects. And I should mention that most of the water that flows from the headwaters to Prado, 70% of that water is treated wastewater from upstream wastewater facilities that we're, again, capturing and recycling and reusing. So almost every drop of water that comes down the Santa Ana River is recycled and reused. So how does FIRO work? I talked about it conceptually, but I want to show you graphically what it means and a change in operations and how that translates to extra water. And I know Paul's very interested with the California Water Plan in showing increases for water supply. So this is a great example of how FIRO can help the state with that goal. So historically, the Army Corps has a bright red line at an elevation of 505 behind the dam. So that's an elevation at which you can store water, and that's the maximum that we're allowed by the water control manual. And as storms would come in, the Army Corps would make sure that they would not go above the line. That was bright red line. So what you'll notice is the blue line is the actual hold of water over time. And you'll notice they stay just below the red line. So the difference between the red and the blue line is the amount of water lost for water supply that could have been captured because we're not maximizing up to the red line. And when a big storm comes, they will pre-release a lot of water, which means we're not capturing that and using that for water supply. It's a missed opportunity. So this is out of abundance of caution. And again, historically, the Army Corps operates for flood control, not for water supply. This year, the mission of Army Corps has been changed by Congress to now have a mission of water supply. And so their focus is shifting to both flood control and water supply. And so with FERO, that allows an opportunity for more accurate forecasts, which gives the Army Corps more faith in what's actually coming and if there's another storm coming behind that. And with faith and trust in forecasting, they're willing to operate above the line. And what that means for Orange County is that anything, again, above the line is extra water for water supply. So now instead of losing water, we're actually gaining additional supply. And then they can go above the line and ease back into the line with each storm. And so that's an opportunity. That's just an opportunity of actual water capture based on optimization and better forecasting. So how did this year translate for water supply? Because of an operational shift using better forecasting, we were able to get roughly 6,000 acre feet of additional water supply. That is worth $6 million of water. And so that's significant. And that helps us keep our rates low. It makes sure that we're maximizing our storm opportunities and that we're providing a reliant and resilient source of water moving forward. Now that was just one wet year. Not every year is a wet year. This past year, we didn't really get any rain at all. So we have to look at these benefits to water supply on average over wet and dry years. And if we implement FERO long-term at different elevations, we can project how much water potential there is by operating this way. And I mentioned we were at 505 at the time, and we got 6,000 acre feet, right? That was one year. But you can see over time, and as we move up in elevation, the potential increases significantly. We just also received a minor deviation to elevate to 508 this year. And so for the next 5 years, we're going to be operating at that higher elevation, which again is additional storage capacity plus FERO operations. So then we're really maximizing and increasing the amount of water that we can capture. Okay, this is all great. We want to manage for flood control. We want to manage for water supply, but equally important is that we manage for our environmental health. And what you see here is that Prado Basin behind the dam. It's a large riparian habitat. It's natural riparian habitat, and there is a section of constructed wetlands that is part of that area. And so we have two different types of riparian environments behind the dam that we're wanting to protect and utilize. And I'm going to see if this is possible. You guys will have to tell me if this works. I'm trying to play a video. Are you guys able to see a video moving? Yeah. Okay. So this is just more of like a 360. You can see how large this area is and where the natural versus the constructed wetlands is and how that's shaped out. The constructed wetlands is used mostly for duck hunting and recreational purposes, and the endangered species of bird, the least bell's vireo, does not live at all in the constructed wetlands. It only lives in the natural riparian areas outside of the constructed wetlands. Okay, here's that little bird that I was talking about, the Least-Bell's vireo. We almost were not able to go to 508 minor deviation because historically we were unable to satisfy U.S. Fish and Wildlife that we were being protective. We have a vegetation monitoring program, and we also have a vireo monitoring program. And we are able to show annually that the bird population is expanding. But we had a harder time measuring and quantifying vegetation cover over time. And so that's where we really got stuck, and we needed to think innovatively. To me, I'm a biologist, it just makes sense that the birds aren't going to be expanding unless they have the habitat. They are linked, right? But again, you have to show through science and data that you're meeting regulatory requirements. So we went on this path. If we can use AI and machine learning to enhance weather forecasting, why can't we do that to protect the environment? So I set on a path of trying to build an environmental digital twin that would take all of our historic data and measure it against the regulatory requirement, and then go out and use satellite data, historic satellite data, and overlay that with our data to see if we are meeting that regulatory requirement. And this would help provide informed decision making, which would hopefully build trust and show compliance, which would allow us to then go higher in elevations for water storage. And then I think telling your water story is so important. And a lot of times we do that through annual reporting, but that's not really a great story because I'm not sure it's storytelling. So I think having visualizations of what's actually happening in nature and seeing that is extremely helpful to build trust, and gives you a better representation of the whole environment rather than just maybe one data metric. So the goal was to build that and try to show that we are in fact helping the environment. And so we went on a journey. It was a 12-month journey where I hired 2 independent consultants. Well, one was CW3E, who's doing the weather AI modeling. We asked them if they could try to do this habitat modeling as well. So they're one consultant. And then we hired a tech consultant who had a background in AI and machine learning. We independently gave them the data sets, made sure that they were both standardized in the questions, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife determined what those questions were, and they were a partner with us in this project the whole way through, and we had regular check-ins every 3 months throughout this process. The 2 consultants were not allowed to share how they were going to move forward or their process, and then at the end we were going to come together and do this grand reveal to see if, first of all, did we have enough data? Was AI and machine learning accurate? Because that's important. It's a new technology. And would they independently come to the same results? So that was the goal in the journey. And so what we realized very quickly when we started that journey was that our data was not centralized in one place. We had data all over the place, and it wasn't, necessarily standardized, and what we call different fields. So we had to get standardized. It's called a data dictionary, where you're just standardizing and everyone's calling a field the same thing and has the same meaning. So I would say it took us 6 months just to get our data in order. So data centralization is a thing, and definitely to get started on a project like that is something that really needs to be considered. So we got that together, we handed it out, and what we got at the end was we came back together and both consultants came to exactly the same conclusions using completely different AI methods. So that was really powerful to say, you know, this really worked for us because we had enough data to be able to tell the story. And that story was that holding water does in fact increase vegetation. It helps with vegetation recruitment, which then leads to more nests. And these birds in particular, they don't just build one nest. If there is enough vegetation in the area, they'll build multiple, 2, 3 nests. So that increases population pretty dramatically if the opportunity is there for them. And we were able to show that, which is a great story because U.S. Fish and Wildlife really thought we were killing everything in the way that we were operating. So this was a complete shift in understanding and was really helpful to moving forward. Okay, this is kind of what the modeling looks like. It's a synergy of satellite mapping and bird nesting. And it was just a great way to also see our data in a pictorially. We have only had it in data tables and annual reports. And so this is a really great success story for us. And it was just nice to see visually the patterns of what's happening over time. And you could cycle through this over the years and the decades and see that progression of vegetation and of the population. Okay, I am going to try again to play. So what you'll see on the left-hand side are these data boxes here, and this red line is moving across the data, and that translates over to the picture. So you'll notice that this picture is changing, and it's showing the eco flows, right? It's showing how the water is changing in the space over time. And it's looking at inflow of water into the basin, and other factors. But you can see right here that we're starting to capture a storm. And so now it's starting to collect and hold, and then it releases. Prado is a dry dam. It doesn't store water all year long. It only stores temporarily, which allows us to then release it at a rate that we can take it down below. But it's just temporary storage. But it is interesting to see where the water comes in and then where it settles and stays within the Prado Basin. So again, telling our story visually, understanding where the water is, where it's going, all very, very helpful, especially when you're talking to regulators, who are our partners, by the way. Okay, so where do we go from here? We got the green light to use this as our regulatory compliance tool moving forward. And so we're going to develop this further, and we're going to add more data points. So for the first phase, really was just data centralization and looking at inundation of water on riparian and nests and population dynamics. So just inundation of water over time. It was a very focused study. We want to now add groundwater, like distance to groundwater, plants distance to groundwater as one of the GIS layers. We're also using LiDAR data to help us map sediment inflow into the basin and where that's settling out so that we can see if that's affecting the distance to groundwater for the plants. We're incorporating the weather forecasting into the model as well, so we can see if that's also having an effect. And then we're going to use all of these correlations to help optimize for storing the water so that we're optimizing for environmental benefit, flood control, and water supply. So we want to optimize for all three and not just flood control and water supply. So this is, again, just part of the AI modeling. We're going to add these new data metrics and layers to the model. We're going to feed it in. And then once we have these correlations, we're going to then apply it to the Vireo population dynamics so that we're always going back to them and understanding how groundwater is affecting them, how sediment's affecting them, how climate is affecting them. Again, and it will all go back into that. So it's kind of an exciting time for us. It's a innovative new way to, I think, manage an environment. And again, this is all very local. It's Prado Basin specific. So FURO has it's new, but it's expanding very quickly, and it predominantly was focused on water supply and flood. And so now we're looking to do more than just that. Again, it's that confluence of operating for the environment, for water supply and flood control. So it's changing. I feel like the mission of FURO is changing for the better. And then let's look up. We're in a watershed. We're an individual agency applying, one tool, but we're also an agency that is at the bottom of the watershed. And as we look up and we look around, we're trying to understand how CIP projects in the watershed are going to come online because everyone wants to do water recycle projects now. And what that means is those wastewater flows that are put into the river, that's what we're capturing. The agencies upstream want to start using that water and recycle it locally in their area. And so we're trying to track and figure out when these projects are going to come online and how that's going to decrease the base flow in the river over time, and where in space and time that's going to all happen. And so if you were to look at all the CIP projects that are going to affect base flows in the river, you'll start to notice there's going to be some significant decreases in base flows over time. And that all leads to Prado Basin and this endangered species habitat. So we want to make sure that there's enough flow coming down to Prado to sustain what we've put so much investment in, right? We want to maintain the riparian habitat. We want the Least-Bell's vireo to succeed. In addition to that, there's also the Santa Ana sucker, which is an endangered fish that lives in the main stem of the river. So we need to look at flows for their environmental protection as well. So we're noticing this trend of flows going down over time. And we also have this new habitat conservation plan for the watershed, for all the agencies in the watershed, where these CIP projects are going to come online and there's going to be permit coverage mitigation for those projects, which is great. So they are looking at the watershed holistically in terms of taking the water out, what ramifications is that going to have to the environment across the whole watershed. The issue is that there's no monitoring plan. So how will they know and quantify the reduction in flows and where those impacts are, right? So that's the question, and that's our concern. And so we're hoping that this digital twin that we're developing for Prado could extend to the entire watershed over time and then start looking at Santa Ana sucker, from Seven Oaks Dam to Prado, and also look at other habitat and see if we can build in those layers. And this could become a regional tool to help us understand water supply in the river and how to manage that for flood control, and then again, environmental protection at a watershed scale. And so just some key takeaways real quick is, innovation for impact. I think we're all developing some really cool tools, and I think if we come together, we can synergize and show that we're going to make some significant water supply metrics that I know the state wants to make, but that we can protect the environment along the way as we do that. So happy to take any questions. That's all I have for you today.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. That was an amazing presentation and really cool to see how all the data and the science are being used to help optimize and inform your decision making and operations. So thanks for that. I see Chris Milan has her hand up.
Hi, thank you for that. Yeah, I was totally playing catch up there on your project. I didn't realize that it was until you mentioned that it's not a dam that holds water year round. You're holding it and releasing it, and basically, correct me if I'm wrong, you're changing the natural hydrology of the river in terms of what the I don't know, you don't have salmon or steelhead coming up your river?
No, we don't. And we're not changing the hydrology. The dam has been there for a very long time and is, built and owned and operated by Army Corps of Engineers. We are just trying to work in concert with them to operate it in a more natural, holistic way moving forward.
Okay. Okay. So you never had salmon or steelhead, or they went away because of the dam?
You know what? I don't know the history, but I know that we don't have that now and haven't had that in a long time. So I think the Santa Ana sucker has been the main player in our watershed rather than salmon.
Norman Johns.
Hi, that was a great presentation. I'm curious about the trajectory being envisioned there on wastewater recycling above Prado. Is there a permitting hurdle that those entities have to go through, or is it like once or is the water that they're currently discharging more or less their property to do as they wish with?
That's a great question, and the answer is complicated. So we have a judgment in the river for water rights, and the upper watershed utilities are required via the judgment to discharge a certain amount of water for Orange County. Now, currently, that base flow amount is much larger than that judgment amount. So they do have the right to take anything up to that judgment amount for their own use. The only issue with that is that we're not looking collectively at the unintended consequences of everyone doing that and the effects to the environment on that. So everyone's rushing to, build their CIP, but no one's looking to see how that's going to affect anyone else in the watershed or the habitat. And so what we're petitioning is to have a more regional, holistic watershed model for water management. And I think that's where the HCP comes in. It's going to be a new joint powers authority that will help bring everyone together with their CIP projects to see if it will have effects on environment. Now, the HCP doesn't do anything about water supply. So Orange County Water District is trying to add that layer of water supply to the model so that we can look at both. And the HCP is a streamlined permitting process for member agencies, 50-year permit coverage. It just streamlines the permitting to say that they have assessed the CIP projects. They have already determined how much mitigation is needed for each CIP, and they have pre-built in the mitigation within the watershed, which would allow them to build.
Yeah, like most things, it's complicated. So
It's complicated.
I can imagine,
Yeah.
especially with that many different players too.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why we want to work with the state. And, I think it'd be great to have a tracking system of, the water, and because everything's being recycled and reused for water supply. It's just, you're just now moving it to different parts of the watershed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? We have a couple of links in the chat. Critical habitat for steelhead in Southern California. And then Matthew Heberger said they're still had in Santa Ana until the 1950s, according to Wikipedia.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Glad to have you here, and it was really awesome to hear about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you guys. I want to use that EcoFlow calculator. That sounds really good.
Yeah, feel free. And if you have any questions, the CEF Tech team is happy to help answer those.
Great, thank you.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
Anne, do you have a question?
I did unmute just in case. I was going to ask about the question about the increase in storage of the wastewater upstream. Is that because of increase in demand for the drinking water that will provide? And is that that's the trajectory they anticipate that increase?
I believe so. Every area has their water demand studies, right? And so they are looking to enhance their water supply and then use recycled water for non-drinking water purposes in their area.
Oh, that's great that they can separate it out for that purpose.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks, Lisa. I don't know if there's a couple of questions, Gretchen or others, on the functional flows calculator. Okay, if not, we can wrap up. We can do a roundtable of updates. So if anyone wants to share any updates of things they're working on or announcements, feel free to unmute.
Hi, this is Ray Heimstra with Orange County Coastkeeper, Inland Empire Waterkeeper. I just wanted to let everybody know that we've started a 2-year state-funded project to identify sites along waterways in the Inland Empire, which is the metropolitan area of San Bernardino and Riverside County, for use as cooling areas going forward, because we have with climate change, we're having increased impacts, to the population and a greater need for cooling areas. So this will include mapping out a lot. Right now, there's actually a lot of recreation on the Santa Ana River. It's mostly informal, but there's a lot of beaches and a lot of people using those areas. So having appropriate flows for them to be able to recreate, certainly along with wildlife. The Santa Ana sucker's really struggling, and but I just wanted to let people know that that's something that's going on, and I'll put my contact information if you're interested in more information on the project.
Great, thanks, Raymond. Any other updates? We had a couple more comments in the chat. So Chris Milan said you likely had salmon in Santa Ana, but the dam took their habitat. Maybe you can use CEF to restore salmonid habitat. And then Kyra Fitz said you can also look at the recovery plan to see locations targeted for management actions. And there's a link by Noah in the chat. Okay, and then last item, I was curious if there's any suggestions on potential topics. I know the last time we had a recommendation to have a FERO presentation, so thanks, Lisa, for giving that presentation. Any other potential agenda topics or topics of interest from the group? Oh, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was wondering if you can provide a presentation on CEF projects, any CEF project in the state that's showing results.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. Thanks, Chris.
Mhm.
Well, definitely. So I will say a part of a project that's just getting kicked off, funded by CDFW, the Cannabis Restoration Grant Program. One piece of that is creating an inventory of all of the CEF case studies that have been implemented across the state. And so we're working on compiling all the case studies right now, and maybe within the next meeting is in November, November 18th. We may have some updates on that, or the following in about 6 months. But thanks, Chris. It's a good recommendation. Chris Kwan.
Hi, I was wondering about the functional flow calculator, if you're able to compare it with unimpaired flows or apply that to the functional flows. Is that a difficult comparison? Maybe that approach don't really work together, but it also brings to mind the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan update that just came out recently, the newest draft, which focuses on unimpaired flows. Maybe that'll be a good topic for the next meeting as well, an update on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Bronwyn, did you want to comment on that?
Sure, yeah. So the functional flows calculator does do it actually does make it really easy to compare to the the modeled natural functional flows. That's a comparison that's built into the tool. In the initial visualization, you can compare the metrics you're seeing to the metrics we would expect under natural conditions. And then also there's this alteration assessment, which does a comparison of predicted natural and observed flows to get a sense for that as well. And the focus on all of those is just on like the ranges of predicted functional flow ranges that are the result of another modeling effort we did a few years ago. So there's that. It's a slightly coarse comparison because it's just by water year type. It's not able to go year by year and make a comparison for what we would expect to see based on hydrology. It's just like, is it a wet or a dry or a moderate year? This is sort of the range of flows you might expect to see. But yeah, I hope you're able to explore the tool, and I'm happy to answer more questions if you have them after checking it out.
Awesome, thanks, Chris and Bronwyn. Another thing that I could just flag is that we are working on a case study application using CEF to inform flood managed aquifer recharge. And we're exploring different ways that the functional flows calculator and some of the readily available tools through CEF could be used to help tailor managed aquifer recharge across a couple of different case study watersheds. So a couple of us that are here today are working on that as well. So we could potentially provide an update on that in November. Depending on our progress on the case study, we could also do that in the following meeting as well. Okay, so if there aren't any other updates or topics, if you think of anything, feel free to email me, and I can, or if you have anyone that wants to give a presentation or have some more formal time to give an update on the work that you're working on, feel free to reach out to me or Brianna. We're happy to add you to our agenda. So thank you so much for joining our quarterly meeting. Our next meeting is on November 18th from 10 to 12. And so feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or comments. Thank you so much.